F1 is always looking to improve, whether it be with new roles, new tracks, or new racing directors. As people say, if you sit still, you're essentially going backwards. F1 rules can be complex and challenging, with people often struggling to understand why specific penalties were applied. This makes being a race director tricky and difficult, with race directors under fierce pressure. Some moments in the season were just bizarre, with many people left scratching their heads, and it now looks like F1 is making a change, with a familiar face in line for a return and a new rule to be introduced. Stick around to discover who the familiar face is and the new rule F1 is looking to introduce. The 2023 season is fast approaching, and with it, a growing excitement for F1's biggest season. But to deliver on the ever-increasing excitement, F1 needs to improve its race officiating, with many decisions last season infuriating racing fans. After the backlash from the 2021 F1 season, a change was made, with Michael Masi being replaced with 2 racing directors and a senior advisor. The new directors were Niels Wittig and Eduardo Freitas. Adding to their experience, Herbie Blasch would serve as a permanent senior advisor for Wittig and Freitas. With 3 replacing 1, the race officiating should improve, but let's say it wasn't great, with the US Grand Prix and Japanese Grand Prix standing out. Fernando Alonso was given a 30-second penalty after the United States Grand Prix, dropping from 7th to 15th place. The Spaniard drove on after a heavy crash with Lance Stroll despite extensive damage to his Alpine. Alpine filed a complaint and the result was overturned. However, Haas, the team that complained to the FIA about Alonso's car, appeared to have filed the protest too late. Race officials admitted the mistake, and the Spaniard got his 7th place back 4 days later anyway. And let's not forget the crane incident in Japan. The left drivers infuriated. Both race directors are coming in for heavy criticism for 2 racing incidents, Freitas for Japan and Wittig for the Austin GP. Freitas was not seen in the paddock after the Japanese GP, and Wittig appeared to lose all confidence after the Fernando Alonso penalty. Wittig was at the center of the controversy after wrongly informing Haas they had an hour to lodge their claim, with the regulation stating they have a 30-minute deadline. The time of Haas's protest was the point of contention, and Alpine ultimately used this to prevail in their appeal. It now looks like the FIA has had enough, with FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem having this to say about new racing directors. "We're currently working with my team on race directors," Ben Sulayem told the media at a press conference on the Dakar. "We are going to train the stewards and the race directors, so you can't have just one race director and trust him completely all year round. So we have to think about training a second line. If we want to support the world of motorsport, we have to be prepared with better training, and we believe that somewhere there is always a better race director and a better steward." Not exactly a vote of confidence from the president of the FIA. It now looks like we could be getting 2 new racing directors instead of 1. The FIA's idea of replacing Masi with 2 racing directors hasn't precisely worked, with the FIA almost bringing Masi back on several occasions, including Miami last year. Some pundits believe he would be good for the sport, including Peter Windsor, who had this to say about the former race director. "Masi is working in motorsport in Australia again, and he's doing race direction stuff again. One of my mates said that if Formula One made him an offer, he'd probably come back and he'd probably do a very, very good job compared with where we are at the moment. Obviously, he made a massive mistake in Abu Dhabi, and everybody makes mistakes, but the groundswell argument is it any worse than where we are? And if nothing else, he does actually make decisions, and he's very organized." The reports that both racing directors will not return to the paddock make it very difficult for the FIA to ignore Masi, as he has the experience and knowledge to be an excellent racing director. There will, however, be an outcry in the Mercedes camp if Masi were to return, with Toto Wolff publicly stating he was not happy with Masi. The FIA acknowledged Masi's controversial decision as a human error, and Wolff made light of this by saying human error or an error human. That is not exactly nice from the Mercedes team principal. According to reports, Masi has been in contact with the FIA president and has kept himself busy after leaving F1. Now, with both directors coming under fire, the FIA could turn to the Australian once again, with the president recently saying that Masi was not fired but left on his terms. They are not closing the door on the Australian. Ben Sulayem was also asked why Masi left the FIA last year. "It was his choice," he explained. "There are human mistakes and he didn't want to continue. When he received the threats on social media, I talked to him and told him that it was unfair and that the FIA would support him. It is the same thing that happened to Silvia Bello or to another of our people. I myself was threatened to change the result of Abu Dhabi 2021. We have to be firm so that social networks do not endanger the future of our sport. Reading between the lines, it appears that Masi's relationship with the FIA is still strong and could be welcomed back with open arms. And we know that we're pretty sure Red Bull fans will be happy to see him back. Now, the racing directors are not the only thing changing this season, with F1 looking to completely change how power unit penalties are given out, with a commission due to meet at the end of January, with grid drops to be a thing of the past. Every season, each F1 team has a set number of engine components they can use. Many teams go over the allowance due to wear and tear, failures and crashes. Should a team go over, the team in question will receive a grid penalty relative to how many engine components have been changed that is over the allowance. This would be fair if the teams didn't use this to their advantage and essentially cheated the system, with many being accused of manipulating the system. Teams tactically choose which races they would like to take the penalty on based on how easy it is to overtake. F1 is now looking to make these rules stricter. The statement from a recent meeting reading, "The Commission discussed possible updates to the penalties relating to power unit infringements. It was agreed the current system needs to be a stronger deterrent to teams to make strategic power unit changes and encourages the change of more elements than required once a driver has accumulated more than a certain level of penalty. This ultimately causes higher parts costs and undermines the PU element annual restrictions. This will continue to be discussed at the Sporting and Power Unit Advisory Committees for further analysis and refinement." With this no easy task of what the penalties should be, there are three schools of thought about what F1 should do. The first school of thought is an on-the-grid penalty, where teams are forced to serve a penalty of up to 30 during the race, depending on how many components they have changed. This would mean drivers would lose track position during a Grand Prix and hinder their progress in trying to make up the lost positions. This penalty could work, but ultimately could be manipulated as the grid plates penalty that is already in place. It also adds confusion as to when the penalty must be served. A points deduction could also be a possible penalty, with points automatically being taken away from a driver's tally as they exceed the limit. This could work as it's less speculative and can't be manipulated, but it's unfair to the driver as he is only partly to blame for new components. It could possibly be taken off the constructor's leaderboard, which would put it more in line with the components being replaced. The final suggestion could be financial penalties, but these would need to be significant enough to impact teams as well as affect the team's budget cap for it to be effective. The problem with points and financial penalties is that it's simply unfair to the smaller teams. The bigger teams would see the penalties as a monetary problem and could just keep doing it. The smaller teams could also see their entire points balance for the season wiped out with one power unit penalty, which is not fair. Comment below and let us know, should Masi come back, and what should the FIA do about grid penalties?